And so today we are going to talk about the deadlines that are due today and then next week. So today you will be submitting, or tomorrow rather, tomorrow is the deadline for your team report. Team report draft. So what that means is that you would be submitting a full document, as much as you have, mainly to check your work for plagiarism. Years ago, when we started the project, we didn't have this deadline. So we didn't ask the teams to submit the draft of their work a week in advance. And so that was not a very good practice, because many teams would wait until the last day to start putting everything together. And so they thought, we have everybody wrote his or her section, so we only need an hour, maybe 2 hours to put it all together and submit as the final report. And what happened in many cases, the teams underestimated how much time is needed to put it all together. And many teams would either miss the deadline or submit something that is rather weak in terms of the quality. Then a few years later, we added the draft deadline, so the one that is tomorrow. So you are required to submit as much as you have. And so by doing so, first we prompt you to start putting everything together early. And so this way, even if you need more time, you would have an extra week. And two, very importantly, when you're submitting the draft to turn it in, you are able to see the plagiarism report or statistics on your report. And so this way, if there is a problem with plagiarism in your file, you have 1 week to fix it. And let me quickly show you what this looks like when you submit your work to turn it in. So if you see my screen, this is how it would work. If you haven't submitted your draft yet, this is how it would go. So you go to turn it in. In the instructions, in the instruction sets for the challenge, there are step-by-step instructions for how to create a turn it in account and how to submit your work. So you would need to provide your name, and then it will ask for the class ID, which is, again, let me actually show it here, because some people don't know how to do it and sometimes spend more time than necessary to submit the report. So let's open just any of the challenges. Let's take, for example, Believe, right? When you go to turn it in instructions, right here, you will find, let me go, I think it's at the very draft, submission instructions, just 1 second. Where do we have the instructions? So that's where you do it. So you go to turn it in, and so there is a class ID that you would need to provide. So this is the number that you show the system so that the system knows what class you're in. So basically Xculture. And you would need at some point provide this number and this password to be able to submit your work to the right file. And then from there on, it's very easy. You just follow the prompt essentially. But here is what you will see when you log in and submit your work. So first you will select the class, and let's say this is the one, and then you will go to submit the assignment. But this is what I will see, and let me show you one of the submissions just to show you how to read the plagiarism report. So for me as an instructor, I see something that is called Similarity Statistics. And so this is the percentage of your report that has been copied and pasted or matches word for word work on other websites. So turn it in checks literally millions of websites and databases, and checks if what you submitted overlaps word for word with any other submission. And so here we have some submissions that are fine. So 2%, probably it's nothing, probably just accidental match. Let me show you a couple of cases. So if I go here, let's see what exactly seems to be matching here. So as you see, it's less than 1%, nothing major. So here I see, for example, it's about a sentence. So probably they took it from this Eshop world, and so they literally just copied it word for word as one sentence. Not a huge problem. It's properly cited, although it's clearly a quote, and they should probably have provided a page number or provided it as a quote. But 2% is not a big deal, an occasional sentence here and there, we can live with that. Let's take a look at a submission that has 20–30% plagiarism. So let me just go back to here. And so let's open one that has 35% plagiarism, or 33, for example. Normally, when we see the number below 15 or so, we are relatively comfortable with that. More likely than not, those are properly referenced extracts from other work of others. When the number gets above 15, that's when we get nervous, because we're talking about now up to 1/5 of the report being copied, or sometimes even more. And so let's take a look here just to see what the problem seems to be here. So as you can see, we have actually a lot of stuff copied and pasted. And let me just check what so this one is actually not a problem. So what happened in this one? It seems like the team submitted twice their own work. And so here the 16% shows up as University of New South Wales. And University of New South Wales is the university that powers Xculture's access to Turnitin. And so this usually happens, we will have to take a closer look, but this usually happens when the same team submits their work twice and two different people submit this work. And so in this case, the system doesn't know that those are two team members on the same team. And so it marks it as plagiarism. So we would take a close look and probably will exclude this source. And once it's done, in this particular case, we will still have, about 20% left, right? And so some of the sections apparently seem to be as copied and pasted almost whole paragraphs. Like, for example, here, it was copied from telecare, and evidently too much text matches word for word to think that it's a coincidence. As you can see, like literally paragraphs and paragraphs. Now, this would be a problem. If the professor sees something like this, this would be a problem. Let's take a look at another one. So there's another extract, sort of, well, pretends to be cited, right? Because, you have a lot of citations here, but it seems like they found this whole text somewhere on a page. If I click here, I will actually see that page. And it seems like it was literally copied and pasted a whole paragraph, right? So if the instructor sees something like this, they would not be comfortable with it. Now, it's not the end of the world. As I said, the whole reason we do this in advance, so that you can check your work for plagiarism. Most of you are very serious, responsible students who would never cheat, copy and paste work of others and pretend it's yours. And so sometimes it happens that one of your team members may not quite know how these things work. And so if one of your team members happens to copy and paste sections of text without proper referencing of authorship, you will know that. So once you submit your work, you will have to wait for about an hour, maybe 2 hours, while the system goes through those thousands, millions of pages. And then you just log in back and you will see that same report that I just showed you. And you can download it. So it allows you to download it with all that marking, with all those percentages, with all that highlighted text. And so you just bring it to your team and say, hey guys, I checked our submission for plagiarism, and it turns out we have a few paragraphs that have been copied and pasted. We need to change it. And you just spend that remaining week, fixing that problem. Again, some people try to cheat the system and just rephrase. I suppose it's fine, but it's not a solution to the problem. It's just hiding the problem. A proper way to do it would be to see if it's really plagiarism, and if it is, just drop it. Or attribute the section to the author. Just say, somebody said something smart that we would like to mention here. This is the name of that person, and this is what the person said. Done. So unless you're really, really lazy and you just don't want to write it and explain why it's relevant to your work, you would copy and paste. But otherwise, as we said, there is nothing wrong with mentioning work of others. There is nothing wrong with using work of other or referencing work of other. You just have to properly acknowledge it, and you should kind of talk about it not as a copy and pasted text, but say, John Smith has shown that, or provided a definition of, or provided these statistics, and just provide them, maybe in your own language. So that's first part. So you submit the draft, and then from there you proceed with looking at the plagiarism report. And if there is a problem, you have a week to fix it. If there is no problem, you're good. Now, the bigger challenge is that many teams are not quite done with their reports as of today. In fact, many teams are now in panic. They didn't realize how far behind the schedule they were. They don't have much, and now they're not sure what to do. Well, again, don't panic. That's first. For the drafts, we are not grading them. So even though the professors will have access to these files and can technically look at them and probably will see how well or how poorly your team is doing, but it is not part of the submissions that are being graded. So even if you at this time have only a page or 2 pages, you will not receive any penalty. So your instructor, your professor may not be happy with that. But again, in most of the cases, professors do not grade drafts. They will wait until you have the final report, and that one will be evaluated properly. So therefore, if you don't have much now, and if you submit only 1 page, that's okay. It's not going to have any effect on you. But as long as you spend the rest of the week and then writing the actual full report and then submitting the full report. One of the risks, one of the disadvantages of not having the report now is that there will be nothing for you to submit to check it for plagiarism. So if you only have a page now and you still have to write the actual whole report, if you submit that page, the plagiarism report will be essentially irrelevant, because the system will check for plagiarism that 1 page, but not the actual final report. And so obviously, the more you have now, the closer it is to final product, the better it is, because that's how you check your work for plagiarism. Now, here is a trick. If your teams asked if it's possible to submit multiple files and check them for plagiarism, the answer is yes. Technically, you can create a new account and submit a new file to check it for plagiarism. The only problem with that approach is that the system will think that there are 2 students submitting the same work, or I assume if you are submitting the second file as a team, it will be very similar. You may have added a few pages, you may have changed some text, but it will be still a similar file. And when that happens, when you create a new account using a different team member's name and email address, you can do that. The system will think that you are 2 independent students and will think that the second student copied work of the first student. So what you do in that case, as I said, you ignore everything that it says about the University of New South Wales. This is the university in Australia that helps us with Turnitin access. And so what you would do is, when you will be looking at that file, it will probably have most of your submission second file highlighted and saying it's copied and pasted from the first submission. So you just ignore that, University of New South Wales high percentage and look what else is being copied and pasted. As I said, when the final reports will be submitted, we will be carefully reviewing all those issues or things. And when I see that it's a kind of plagiarism or similarity with the earlier submission by the same team, obviously we will manually fix it. So from that perspective, you're not in jeopardy. We will know that it's not a problem. We will know that that's because your team was sort of trying to not cheat the system, but needed to submit 2 files. And as a result, the system thought that one of the students copied work of the other student. So you can do that, although again, it would be much better if you submit as finished as possible a draft and then final report using the second assignment. So try that, see what happens, and it should be fine there. Now, I wanted to provide some feedback on the submissions that I've seen from the early track, but I would like to give you opportunities to ask your questions. So let's see how many questions you have, and if we have time, I will review a few submissions and just talk about what I like about them and what I don't like, and try to give you some tips as to how to submit to finish a file. But let's first see if you have any questions. So Irina is asking a very, very good question. She says, why sources that are cited are indicated as plagiarism? This is a very, very good question, Irina. I should not be using the word plagiarism when I'm talking about Turnitin or any other plagiarism detection software. Technically, the software is smart enough to see when the text is matching word for word, but it is not smart enough to know if it's a proper citation or quote, properly cited quote, or simply copy and paste. And so that's why when we go to Turnitin, it doesn't call it plagiarism. it calls it similarity. So what it does, as you see, it calls it similarity, so it only shows me that a section of the report is similar. But then the professors need to take a closer look and check if it's really a copy and paste plagiarism or if it's a properly cited citation. And Irina, I noticed that one of these submissions is yours, so let's take a look here at your submission, if you see my screen. Let's see which of those could be problematic and which ones of them are not. By the way, wonderful work so far. I really like it. Very nice starting point, very nice title page. Really, really good one. I like this table. Again, nice and clean, but also tells us who did what. The only thing you might want to do here is make the column country narrower. The column email you probably can't make much narrower. And so leave a little bit more space, a little bit wider for work. But anyway, this is very good. Now, executive summary. So here, that's where we become a little bit, nervous. So for some reason we see, let me just go back to executive summary here. Oh, okay, so didn't we just have a section that was, yeah, okay. So let's look at this. So submitted to University of New South Wales. So this one is probably your own submission, but let's take a look where exactly this problem is. So let's take a look here. So from what I understand, this doesn't look like something that you would have copied off a website. Probably what this is, you probably somehow managed to submit 2 files, or I don't know, or maybe you did copy it from somewhere. Yeah, but it shows me that it's a copy and paste from another submission to the same university. And so since it's a text that probably you wouldn't find online, I mean, it's very, very, I don't know, it's a very strange text. It's not something that, one would copy online. I kind of suspect that must be one of your team members submitting something else. So I'm inclined to say that it's not plagiarism. And if you were my students, I would probably unclick this because I see it's through the Xculture portal. It's probably one of these submissions. So let me exclude this here. Let's see what else we have. Now we have 14% here. Let me see if I can find it. And let's see what's in there. So all good here. Where's that 14%? Yeah, that's probably it, right? So isn't it? So, and that's the same thing. So it seems like it still doesn't like this section. And first it said that somebody submitted a paper with this same text to the Xculture system. But now it's saying that someone actually copied it from the hootsuite.com. And so I don't know what this hootsuite.com is, but it shows me here how to advertise on Facebook, a step-by-step guide. And so it looks like you guys copied that step-by-step guide. And technically you can provide a source here. You probably have a source somewhere. Although here, Irina, you don't. So I don't really know where it came from. And it seems like you are pretending to say that these are our guidelines, whereas in reality it was copied from hootsuite.com. But what I would do here is, one, you obviously can start with a sentence that says to advertise, or there are many guides online that provide instructions, step-by-step instructions for how to advertise on Facebook. We found one on hootsuite.com, and you provide a reference that provides a good list. Here it is. And so with that introduction, yes, there is no point to rephrase it because it's a good list. And so, you can change some words here and there, but it will not serve any purpose. And there is no reason to hide it. You just simply say, we found this list on this website. It's a very nice list. So we thought, there is no point in rewriting it. These are instructions. We recommend that you use them. And so you just, keep it as it is. In that case, it wouldn't be a plagiarism because you're not saying that we developed our own instructions and here they are. You say that, we looked for some, we found one that is a very good set of instructions. There is really no point in us rewriting it. So you just go to the source and read it. And for your convenience, here is a copy and paste. And so in that case, it would make total sense. As I said, there is no expectation that you will develop your own instructions for how to use, for example, Facebook advertisement. If somebody did it, I suppose it's fine if you use that link, if you refer the reader to that link. But you have to acknowledge that explicitly that it's not your work, it's work of somebody else. Now here I see an extract from trueeasylife.com, And it actually looks like you guys were trying to hide the fact that you copied and pasted that. I see a lot of rephrasing, but the system is not dumb, so it catches that. And again, I don't see any reference here. So again, how to advertise on Facebook step by step. Seems like that's now, oh, it's the same section, but it seems like the Hootsuite, the Hootsuite wrote it originally, and you copied it from Hootsuite originally word for word, but then True Easy Life plagiarized that work, copied it, and then rephrased it, and now Turnitin sees that your text matches about 5% with another website. So in this case, it's an interesting situation. It actually seems like this was the original submission. The True Life copied it, changed it, masked it so that it doesn't look like it's the original copy and paste, so it looks like it's their own work. Now you guys are sort of being penalized for that as well. Again, not a huge deal if you provide proper explanation for where you got this text from and what it looks like, but it seems like it's a very popular thing. I bet that's another one. So same section, but now another website copied it, and this one is Lasso Art, right? Again, also rephrased, probably copied from the truelife.com. This is a funny situation. It seems like somebody wrote something and then a bunch of places on the website copied it, and now you guys are trying to copy it. So it must be a very popular blogger who wrote it, because it seems like everybody's trying to make a copy of that work. Now here again, it looks like you guys were trying to be a little, too creative. Again, Mays Law, it seems like, they wrote some step-by-step guidelines. Oh no, that's the same section. Okay, everybody's copying the same section. Anyway, and so it seems like for you, it's pretty much all of it's the only section where there's a problem, or there are a few more. Yeah, like this one here. Again, promotional targets, email. Here I do see that you provide references, but the problem with this is this, Irina. You usually provide a reference when you summarize or talk about work of others. Like, for example, let's say I say that, I don't know, this is clean water that costs $2, right? And I post it online. If you say there is some water that is being sold for $2 and you provide me as a reference, that's me referencing your work, right? So you say that somebody talked about the water, it costs $2, you provide that same fact, and you tell where you got it from. But if you copy and paste what I said word for word, again, nothing wrong with it, but in that case, you have to provide it as a quote. So you say this is a direct, exact quote. And so in your case, I see that you changed a few words here, but it's still mainly a quote. And so that's where, again, some professors become uneasy. So you literally copied and pasted a whole paragraph, but instead of referencing it as a quote, a whole paragraph being quoted, you reference it as if it's your own summary of that idea. So not a huge mortal sin. You do provide a reference to where you got it from, but as I said, you're trying to pretend that it's your language. And in reality, it's not your language, it's a copy and paste. So in this case, it's a quote. So in this case, it would have been more proper to put it in quotation marks and either provide a page number or just say, for example, how to advertise via email, website, blog, said it in very nicely, and we don't see a point to rephrase it, so let us provide a whole paragraph in their own words. So in that case, it wouldn't be a problem. Again, it's not a huge problem when you do it this way, as long as you still say that it came from here. But if it's not a quotation mark, it's usually implying that you are using or referring Daniel Offer as a source where the readers can go and make sure that what you said is accurate. Whereas in reality, you literally copied a whole sentence or two sentences from this Daniel's publication. So I don't want to waste too much time on this, but as I said, the system is smart enough to catch some of these things. And we try to look at these for our own students. We try to look at those nuances and make sure that everything's fine. And as I said, if it's a properly cited text, obviously it's not a problem. If it's something like with that how to advertise on Facebook step-by-step guide, as long as you acknowledge where you got it from, not a huge problem. But it's a bigger problem when you copy a whole paragraph and not mention where it came from, or it's a direct quote and you cite it as your own text. That's when it becomes a little bit problematic. So let me add, there are a couple of students who have questions. Let me add them to the panel here so that we can talk to them. And meanwhile, what I will say also is this is why normally we're not too worried when your similarity statistics is 10 to 15%. So normally we are fine with that because we know that some of these could be properly cited quotes. So usually when we see a number 10, 8, 5%, nothing to worry about. It's usually not a mortal sin. That's when we see the numbers 17, 18, 20. That's when we become a little bit more nervous, and that's when we check it more carefully. Emily, you had a question? Please go ahead. I think your microphone is muted, so let me unmute you. Yeah.
Me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So my question was, what if you don't like? So what if you?
Emily, just a second. It seems like Edison is talking on two fronts. Let me just move her back to the audience so that we don't have interference. Edison, if you still want to ask your question, you can raise your hand. I'll add you back, but just there was some interference. So Emily, please go ahead.
I actually had two questions to ask.
Yes.
Number one, if you find info from Google for the draft, must you put in like where on Google you have found that info from?
Well, so Google is not an author, meaning that you cannot find any info on Google. So Google doesn't have their own publications. All Google does is it provides links to sites. And so even though you used Google to find it, it hasn't been published on Google. So Google doesn't publish per se. So it has been published on a specific website or in a specific book or an article. And so Google just pointed you to that article. So in this case, Google is a search engine, but the actual publication is something else. And so from this perspective, you should cite the source where it's been actually published. But you don't need to tell me if you use Google or Yahoo or Bing or whatever else to find that work. So no, you wouldn't be referencing Google because Google is not a publication. Google is a search engine, if that makes sense. Unless obviously it's like google.com website, well, I don't think they have anything on google.com, but maybe some sort of a website where Google publishes its own documents, like a website, their own, company page. So, but no, normally you wouldn't be citing Google because, as I said, it's not the place where things are published. It's an engine that gives you, points you to the place where things are published. Same thing, by the way, with Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a wonderful resource. I use Wikipedia all the time. I even donate money to Wikipedia when sometimes they ask me. I really love it. I admire Wikipedia. But Wikipedia normally doesn't publish their own work per se. So Wikipedia is not a source. Wikipedia is a summary page. So when you go to Wikipedia, you can find an article about something, but somebody wrote that article. And so usually when there are some numbers, statistics, something in that article, usually it would be from somewhere else, and those sources are cited at the end of the Wikipedia article. And so when somebody says something on Wikipedia, you should probably go and find the source that they cite and check that source. And if it's really true, then cite that original source and not the Wikipedia article. Occasionally you would have a Wikipedia article that is a publication in its own right. So sometimes people would publish something there that, is the work of that, like, a professor may publish a paper on Wikipedia about a specific phenomenon. And in some cases, it may be appropriate to cite Wikipedia. But in almost all cases, usually when you read Wikipedia, a Wikipedia article, it's only to sort of, see a summary. But then you would go to the sources that that article was written based upon. And then you check those sources. And if it's something that you need to reference, you reference those sources, not the summary on Wikipedia, if that makes sense. Yes, go ahead, Emily. You said you had two questions.
And my second question is, when you do the executive summary, what do you have to actually put in? Because I'm not quite sure about that.
Very good question. So think about it as a way to save time for the reader of the document. So imagine, Emily, that you own a company and you're a very busy manager or executive, which you probably will be in a few years anyway. But let's say, you're one of the clients. And so you participate in the X-Culture competition, or, for whatever other reason, you get a few reports. So if it's X-Culture, you may get this many reports. If it's something else, it can be fewer. But in any case, you got a stack of reports and you don't have time to read all of them. Like, let's say you got 20 reports, each of them is 20 pages. That's like 400 pages that you have to read. It's a sizable book. You don't have time for that. So the executive summary, the goal of it is to give you a summary of all main ideas on a few, 1 page or maybe 2 pages at most, so that you can review the main ideas in 2 minutes or 5 minutes maybe. And so this way, if you like it, you can then go and read the whole thing. But if you don't like it, you at least get main ideas and move on. And let me share here very briefly what a good executive summary looks like, so that you can better understand what it is. So for example, let me go to the submissions from the last semester. And so best reports, let me open one of them just randomly. You can see my screen, right?
Yes, I can.
So here is a submission by Team 99 from, for Vertical Journey. I hope it will be a good one. I mean, it was one of the best reports. So again, I don't have the time to read the whole report, which is 40 pages. But I see the executive summary here, and it says that Section 1 provided industry and competition analysis. And so you see a quick summary of apparently weaknesses and strengths of the company. Vertical Journey is a venture company. Vertical Journey would like to expand. So they kind of restate the task. I'm not sure if they should have done it because the client sort of knows that already, but I suppose not a big problem. Chile has immense potential. So they kind of provide a quick summary of each section. In the report, it will be several pages for Section 1. Here they summarize key points, right? Chile is one of the most suitable countries. We recommend focusing market efforts on the millennials on sustainable travel business impact. So they provide a summary of that first section here. Same thing, second section, basically marketing. Again, they provide some of the key constructs. Actually, I don't like this summary too much because first it's too big for my taste, too long. And then it's like full sentences, it's hard to read. Let me actually open another one, maybe I'll find another one, because this one, even though it's an executive summary, as an executive, I probably will have to spend like 10 minutes just reading this one, and I don't want to spend that much time. Although I do see that they recommend Facebook and Instagram as an advertisement channel, and there are some interesting, kind of points here. Again, it's not a very readable summary. So let me see if I can find another submission that has a better executive summary. So here is another one for Baker Donaldson. It was a company. Let me get another one because this company is not participating this semester. And I want to find something that you guys can see and use this semester. Marketing expansion strategy, MVP. That's another company that is not participating this semester. 249 Sakona, not participating this semester. Let's see if I can get something. Okay, Unicorn. Unicorn is one of the companies this semester. We have a nice title page. Again, not the best executive summary that I would like to see. The reason I don't like it is because it's providing plain text. And while it's not a huge problem, usually it's a little bit hard to read it. So as you can see, they provide a summary of each section. So in section 1 of the report, a SWOT analysis is done along with comparing unicorn products with local competition. So it's almost like a table of contents. So instead of explaining me or providing a summary of the key points, they tell me what they will tell in each section. I don't like it very much. So let me see if I can find something even better. Interesting that these are winning teams and their executive summaries are not that strong. It's another one, a little bit, yeah, but this one's fine. ICCM, one of the companies here, so they have a little review, which I don't have time to read, but then they have our recommendations, and as you can see, so this is actually good. They give a nice point-by-point summary of the key recommendations. So as a market, they recommend the European Union bloc, and then they say clearly that's what they recommend as a new market, and then they provide a very quick explanation why. There are 2 strong competitors, and they provide the names, Center for Intercultural Dialogue and the World Academy. And again, for me, that's good to know. If I want to learn more of them, I will go for the rest of the paper and read more detailed descriptions. The cultural diversity of the region, so a little bit summary of the key characteristics of the region. Main message for marketing should be underlined that using ICCM service companies receive knowledge and tools that will allow them for long-term growth. Okay, that's actually very good. So as you can see, I can read these, simple bullet points here. And in 2 pages and probably about 5 minutes, I can get the main ideas. I know what market they recommend. I know what advertisement channel they recommend. I know what the message should be. And then I can read the rest of the report, the other 25 pages, to understand what exactly is in that report. So that's probably what you want to do. We'll do one more just because there are sometimes even better reports. And so let's see if I can find one that is like, ideal, perfect. Yeah, this one's also not bad. Again, a little introduction and then main points presented in a bullet list. So this way, by reading 1 page, I can get a good summary. So that's something that you should do. Does that make sense?
I get the idea now.
Chia, you have a question?
No, I think you sort of answered it. Like, I was going to ask, like, what the format of the thing should be, but I think I sort of know what I have to do now.
Okay. With the executive summary, the only thing I would say is I would wait until the end and do it as the very last section. So you want to have everything else written up and be very confident and comfortable with before you move on to write the executive summary. So that's something that will be read first, but should be written last. And so I would wait until the very last moment, and then only then I would write it when you have everything completely worked out. Edison, you had a question? And then we have Nevaeh. So isn't that Edison too? So let me. Yeah.
So my question was.
Yes, go ahead.
What if you don't what if you stop getting the weekly reviews, like the surveys?
You didn't get your survey?
Yeah, like when you check like your scam
You
and
need
they
to
don't
turn
pop
around.
up.
Oh, that's interesting. Send an email to admin@xculture.org and we'll check what's going on there. But no, they're going out. I mean, students are completing the report, so it shouldn't be a problem. I don't want to spend time now on checking my records because it may take 5-10 minutes and it will, take some time, and we don't want the people to wait and look at me looking, for a specific record. But if you or anyone else experiences those kinds of problems, what you should do is send an email to admin@xculture.org and then check, we will check it for you. So maybe there is some problem with your email, maybe there is a problem in our records, maybe somehow accidentally something got, deleted. So it should be relatively easy to fix. Right?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, send that email as soon as possible and we'll look into it. Edison, you had a question? Go ahead.
I have a question about what's on the survey.
Mm-hmm.
So the first question of the survey, it asks that pick someone to drop, I think, the documents or something on.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So this week, you guys are submitting your work to turn it in. And so we don't want every team member to submit the work, 5 times. So if you have 5 or 6 team members, if everybody submitted the work, as I said, the problem here would be, first, I will get 5-6 times as many files that I need, and it would be hard for me to find, which one is the correct one. But second, the system doesn't know that you're on the same team. And it will think that 6 students copied of each other and then submitted that as their own work. So everything will be in red because the system will think that you all plagiarized, of each other. And so that's why only one student needs to submit the draft and then the final report next week. But for me, just to make sure that we know who is submitting that report, so I ask you to indicate that. And between us, the reason for that is it's not even that I care which one of you submits the report. I just want to make sure that you as a team communicate about that, agree who submits the work, and then only one person submits it. So me asking you which of the team members submits the work sort of reminds you that only one needs to submit the work and reminds you to discuss it and not submit your work 5 times, which, as I said, sometimes happens. So all you have to do there is, 1, decide which one of you will be submitting the work and then give me that name. And then if it's you, then you will separately go to Turnitin and submit your work. But if it's not you, you just tell me who it is and move on to the survey. All right?
And my second question is, it's like about the Turnitin website.
Yep.
What does it what does it do? Like, what is it like?
Well, as I said, so when you put it on Turnitin, it checks your work for plagiarism. And so it will sort of, automatically go online and try to find copies of all the, people, all the submissions that may be similar to yours, and it tells me about that. So in some cases, again, just to close the topic with plagiarism, in some cases, students plagiarize. And when they do, obviously it's a problem because they present work of others as their own. And as teachers, as professors, we need to know that. And so this is the tool that allows us to sort of catch that cheating. And since it's bad, we can literally disqualify you from the competition if that happens. And then in some universities, the students will get a failing grade. And then in many cases, they may literally be in some serious trouble. But anyway, you are good students. I'm sure you will not, copy work of others and present it as your own. So you have nothing to worry about. But check your work just to be sure. As I said, maybe one of your team members maybe inadvertently did that, maybe didn't know that it's bad. So you want to know about that so you can fix that problem. Emily, you had another question? Can you go ahead one more time because you were muted? Can you say it one more time? For some reason, your sound is out. So did you change the microphone? I don't hear you. Hello?
Can
Yeah,
you hear
it
me?
seems like it's working now. Yeah, go ahead.
Sometimes my headphones go off and on.
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
was going to ask, how many pages do you recommend for the final report?
This is a very good question, and one that I sort of, how should I put it politically correctly? I don't like that question, and the reason for that is that I personally don't care how many pages you have. My only recommendation would be that less is better than more. So fewer pages is better than more pages. But it doesn't mean that it has to be short, and it doesn't mean that if it's long, it's bad. So I would always check your work for whether or not it's really needed. I would definitely not put stuff in the report that is not essential to your storyline. What some students do, like for example, when they describe the country, they literally go on the Wikipedia article and anything and everything they can find there, they mention in the report: culture, economics, politics. In many cases, it's not needed. I mean, in many cases, the client may not need to know how many political parties the country has and how many members of parliament are in that parliament. And so, so try to be as short, as concise as possible, but not too short. So you want it to be, detailed enough so that the client can understand your logic. But in terms of the pages, as I said, anything, 15 pages and up is okay. So probably less, fewer pages will not be good enough just because it's not enough space to provide detailed explanations. But at the same time, if it's more than 30, 40 pages, usually that means that there is just too much noise in the submission. Usually it means that, you really don't need that many pages to explain this. So, but other than that, I wouldn't put any restrictions here. So if you happen to think that you need 50 pages because you want to provide some, examples of something, or you have a lot of graphics and it takes page space, it's fine. You will not be penalized for that. Likewise, if somehow you manage to put everything, in sufficient detail on 14 pages, maybe you used only bullet lists and only short sentences, I suppose it's fine too. So at least in my class, there will be absolutely no penalty for the report length. It cannot be too long or too short. As I said, I don't really think you should be thinking about the number of pages. You should be thinking about what I need to say and then say it in as many words as needed. And if it happens to be in the end 15, 20, 30, 40 pages, it's okay, as long as you know. So focus on the content and don't worry how many pages it will be in the end. So although, as I said, if it's probably more than 30, 40 pages, you probably are putting too much stuff there. And at the same time, if it's less than that, you probably didn't provide enough detail. But again, no penalty for that specifically. So, all right. So let me see. There are some questions here that I didn't see that people are asking. So Emily, I'm moving you back to the audience. If you have any questions, raise the hand again. When we put some kind of data in our report from the web, how long does it take before I see it if it's been, yeah. So with Turnitin, it takes usually about an hour plus or minus before you can see your similarity report. The reason it takes so long is because it literally goes and checks millions of sources. Sometimes if it's a bigger report, it may be even longer. And sometimes, especially towards the end of the semester when, you know, millions of people around the world submit their work, it can take even longer. So literally sometimes I have to wait for like 4 hours just to get that report. But usually you will see your statistics within like half an hour to an hour. So usually you submit your work and then you either wait or you go and do other things and then you come back in a couple of hours and you will see that report. Now, Yanila is asking if we need to use any special tools or templates. No, we don't really ask. Some projects require using some tools and software. No, we don't. So you just write your report in whichever program you want, Word that you may share in a Dropbox, Google Docs, any other program, as long as you in the end save it as PDF or doc file in Microsoft Word and submit it to Turnitin, that's all we need. So we don't care where you wrote it. You don't need to use anything special. The anonymous NND is asking, so, but what if it was really our own text and it just happened to be similar to somebody else's work? As I said, the way the system is set up is, I think it's checking if more than 7 words match in a given sentence. And so when that does happen, it highlights it and says, okay, that's too similar. And that's, we're talking about 7 words in a row. So when that happens, the system tells us that it's too close to be a coincidence. And again, we look at those, and if it happens to be that one sentence, I mean, just by the, you know, by chance, by luck, happens to be very similar or maybe identical to something somebody else wrote, it's not a big deal. Like one sentence will be probably 1% of your report, maybe even less than that. Even if you have 2 or 3 sentences that just you wrote on your own, you didn't copy anybody's work, and it just happened to be similar. Not a big deal. As I said, when we see numbers, you know, 5, 6, even 7 to 10%, we usually don't worry about that because it could be that maybe somehow one sentence happened to be similar. Or maybe, you know, you have some references there and, you know, you know, properly referenced quotes and the system sees it. So I wouldn't worry about that. At the same time, I do know that it's impossible that just by luck you happen to have 20% of your report written word to word, you know, word for word with somebody else's work. In that case, I know that statistically it's impossible. There is no way that you wrote 5 pages and those 5 pages happen to be exactly the same as work of others. So that's when I get a little bit nervous, and that's when I will do a little bit more investigation and we'll see what's going on there. So, all right. So Emily, I'm not sure if you're asking another question. Let me add you one more time, but let's see what other questions we have here. Edison is asking a very good question. So what if it was a different team member who plagiarized, you know, stuff online, and it was my team's submission, but it was not me? That's a very good question. Yes, it is a problem, and different professors have different philosophy on that. First of all, we will not know if it's you or not you. When you submit your work as a team, we don't really know who wrote what. Some teams explain that. Some teams literally tell us, I wrote this section, he wrote that section, and some professors can take that into account. But in most cases, it is expected that you all at least read the whole report, that you all look at that plagiarism report, and that you all as a team submit the final section. So if you were my student, I would not be happy about that. It would tell me that you as a team member didn't check work of others, didn't look at that plagiarism report, and so that's, you know, shows some lack of care on your part as well. I probably will not penalize you directly, but as I said, I would treat it still as collective responsibility. You are a team, you had an opportunity to check that for plagiarism, and so if you didn't, if somebody copied and pasted, you know, a few pages and everybody else said, oh, it wasn't me, well, it's not really good teamwork. So I wouldn't be happy about that, although, as I said, different professors can have different approach to that. So some professors are extremely strict, others may be a little bit more lenient. So you have to check with your teacher, but don't do that. I mean, check your work. You have the plagiarism report. If you see that there is a problem, confront that student, point that out, ask the student to redo that section. If needed, maybe help him or her redo it together. And so obviously you don't want to submit anything that is, contains plagiarized stuff. Emily, you had another question? Your microphone is muted again. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. So for some reason, I don't hear you again. Meanwhile, while you're checking your microphone, so yes, we have 6 webinars today, so 4 more to go. And this one will be over in 2 minutes. So then the next one starts literally in 2 minutes. And each webinar addresses a different topic. And so the coaches prepared a series of those webinars just in case students have, one of them deals with conflicts in teams, another one deals with some sections of the report. So it's all to help you as you're finalizing your reports. So there will be several webinars, we record them, and obviously if you miss it, you will be able to watch it later. But at the same time, if you want to attend all of them, you're welcome to do so. Emily, last question because we need to yield space for the next webinar.
Okay. My question was, how do you know what questions the survey will ask you?
You don't, but it's not something, again, it's not an exam. You're talking about the final survey?
Yes.
Yeah, no, all of those questions will be basically similar to what you already seen. So there will be no questions about your work style or personality. All of the questions will be about what had happened in your team. So it will be all about, how frequently did you communicate? Did you have any conflicts? Was everything fine? There will be questions about the project itself. We will ask you, was there something that you particularly liked, or maybe didn't like? And so we would like to hear from you because we want to improve this project next semester. So those questions don't have right and wrong answers. You're not being graded on your answers. It's just so we know how it went so that we can use it for improving the project in the future. All right?
I just have one more quick question.
Yes, and we really need to stop because the other webinar is waiting, so I'm starting getting messages. Yes, go ahead, please.
When you do your draft, because I have 2 reports. So one where I put all the blocks together. If you copy a word from the blocks where I put together onto the draft that you do, will that also be shown on the...
Shouldn't be unless you have it somewhere in a public database. So if it's a private file somewhere in Google Docs, it shouldn't take that, as a copy and paste. But as I said, we will take a closer look at each individual submission, and it should be, something that we can investigate. But no, if it's your own, personal file somewhere, it shouldn't be highlighted as plagiarism. No worries about that. All right, so let me end the meeting because the next webinar starts in a minute. So thank you so much, everyone who attended. And I recommend that you log into the next webinars today because some of them are really useful and hopefully will help you write a good report. All right, good questions, Emily.